Hey there. Welcome to the welcome to GSPN's. I was going to say ongoing, but this is pretty much it. This intro is going about as well as most of the Greek games have gone. I'm Ty Windisch, joined by Adam McGee. We're GSPN's Milwaukee Bucks coverage presented by Prize Picks, and we are recording later in the morning after I got up early. A pretty reasonable time for Adam. For once, the script was flipped to watch Greece lose to Germany. I don't even have the box score up. It ended up being, I think, more than 10 points.
13, 76, 63.
I wasn't used to not sweating point differential by the end, so I was looking, I was like, is this? And I was like, it doesn't matter. It's over now. Giannis still leading the tournament in points, may end up leading the tournament or leading the Olympics in points, I should say. We'll see if anyone else goes off, but he's got a pretty good lead right now. But Greece is unfortunately done. We're going to talk about just the whole run for Giannis and his first ever Olympics, the first Greek Olympics in quite a while for basketball, and then a couple other minor Bucks things. But first, Adam, on this lovely Tuesday afternoon for you, how's it going?
It's gone well, Ty. I would have liked us to be reflecting on a Greek win here, on Giannis going to a medal game at the Olympics with Greece, and we know how much that means to him. Honestly, it looked pretty good early on. I was getting excited. Man. Even in the third quarter, when they had a kind of second run, I was like, all right, well, if you learned any lessons from, what happened after the first run, maybe it'll be good here. It wasn't to be.
It wasn't, and to make the pain even worse, the team that eliminated Greece last time on their nice run in international competition, Germany, with, of course, I'm going to say maybe one of the biggest Bucks antagonists active right now in basketball, Mo Wagner. I mean, hits Giannis with the too small in the first quarter, and I really hoped we were going to get like pure, just electric Giannis from there. And he had a solid game by his standards. I mean, obviously was still the best player on Greece by a wide margin. I do think, as we chatted a little bit before we started recording, the fatigue of what he did in the rest of the tournament did start to catch up with him in this game. Also the fatigue of, he's seeing 2 or 3 German bodies every time he touches the ball. That was going to be obvious. And Greece, I think, which was the story of this run, had no counter to that. And I think that's probably the place to start. This was another thing we kind of chatted about before we started recording. Reminiscent, but worse than some of the worst Bucks playoff losses with Giannis. Obviously, we've had losses without Giannis in the last couple of years, and those are worse in a different way. But just seeing him surrounded by bodies, spraying out beautiful passes, and that's one of the differences, I think, from the Bucks losses was he wasn't as good at handling these things in like 2019, 2020, and before. Now he knows exactly what to do. He's lacing these beautiful passes. The Greek team just had really no one who was able to consistently do anything with that space. A couple of guys had moments, but it ended up being a pretty tough watch as that early lead when they were forcing turnovers, running in transition, getting into the rim. Germany just came back with a vengeance. Franz Wagner was great, and the German defense really shut down Greece for large portions of this game.
He just desperately needs, a running mate at international level. He needs one other player who he can form a tandem with. In this game, there was a very early on, Nikolaitis was actually hitting shots. And I was like, okay, is this going to be like the game? Is he going to step up here? That really cooled off in a hurry. Kostas Papanikolaou doing some really, really nice things. That ultimately cooled off too, but in some ways you're like, God, if he did that every game, maybe you're closer to something. It's a bit, we're a bit down the line on his career too. Thomas Walkup had some nice moments and some truly hideous moments too, where it's just really, really difficult. I think ultimately Giannis kind of looks a little bit muted out there because he is facing, he was facing a wall from the German defense, and they had no shortage of NBA centers, NBA forwards to throw at him. So real size, and also guys at real size who have seen Giannis before. It's not like, oh my God, what do we do with this guy? He's from another universe. So it just became really, really difficult. I think as the game went on, he felt a more peripheral figure too. You didn't even get the opportunity to see him do as much with his passing. Greece weren't making those shots. And then even then, the other end, we had some, wide open German trees where it would seem like, the Greek defense collapsed. Some pretty mediocre at best defensive rebounding for the Greeks, leading second chance chances. It was a very familiar script, and I don't know if any of us really needed that, in our August as we begin our ramp up back to Bucks basketball. But I know we've plenty of Greek friends and Greek listeners listening, and it's tougher for them than anyone else. But I don't know what you do with this. It's just one of those things you can't control. It's not like you can go make a trade. It's not like oh, well, we struggled this time. We'll have a better pick in the draft next year and you go figure this out. You can't control what your generation looks like as an international player. Like, Greece has had great international players. They've had really, really strong teams. And what those teams would have done to have a superstar at the forefront of it all, like Giannis, and now what he would do to have a supporting cast like a lot of those teams did, it's just not coming together all at once. I think what's kind of poignant about this, you mentioned first Olympics going in. He's 33 at the next one, though. And 4 years is a long time. Like, maybe someone does come along in Greek basketball, but you'd still be asking a lot of someone pretty young, realistically, at that point. It's tough to see how Giannis's international dreams are going to be realized, because this felt like a really good chance. Like, when they're up early over Germany, you're like, okay, hold on against Germany. France or Canada's tough, but hey, it's a one-off game for a medal. That could be the kind of thing you secure your legacy at an international level. You get a medal. It's what Giannis has talked about quite a lot over the years that he wanted to do. Missing out on this chance, though, the path doesn't get any easier. Like, when you look at Germany, have improved dramatically from where they were a few years ago. France, obviously, are a completely transformed team from what they were. Spain will always be steady. You've got Serbia. When we get back to Eurobaskets and FIBA World Cups, we'll see what Luka can make Slovenia into. The US will always be a factor. Canada, better than they've been in a long time. Australia will always be solid. It's an increasingly deep pool and long list of countries. And I think Greece suffered on a lot of fronts with that in this Olympics. Like, that group they found themselves in, talk about a tough group. Maybe you find yourself in a better spot otherwise if you come out and you're first or second in the group. But honestly, quarterfinal against Germany is a pretty good chance. And I looked it for a while. They just don't have enough, though. It's too much for one man to do on his own.
Yeah, I mean, just if they had a player akin to a Dennis Schroeder, which to people who haven't watched the tournament sounds ridiculous. To people who have been watching a lot of international basketball, it may sound like I'm asking for too much. I mean, Schroeder's been a really good international player, but just a guard with speed and who can just get downhill. It just felt like, I think Walk Up ended up being one of their only really effective shooters, 50% from the field, 38% from three for the tournament, but just wouldn't take a lot of open threes and wouldn't, like, if he had open space, half the time he just wouldn't do anything with it. And it just was like, okay, so like, we're not accomplishing anything on offense. And I agreed with the broadcast that was saying, instead of posting Giannis up where it's easy for the help defense to come over his shoulder, give him the ball up top. Like, let's just try and open the floor and really make these guys shoot. And it felt like Greece didn't adjust very well and didn't get in enough different things. I mean, they're doing the Giannis post and the player one pass away is Kaletis. Shot 26% from three in the tournament, sub 30%, I believe, from the field. Like, don't anyone but him, really. I guess maybe not Papagiannis, who had a pretty dreadful tournament after a really good qualifying tournament. That was a big letdown.
I don't know about the next Brook Lopez that Giannis remark we had.
He doomed him.
That really super wide open corner three attempt he had, it was bad. It was really ugly. He did not know what to do. The wind up on it was just not pretty. I'm not seeing that one, Giannis. I'm sorry. He had some nice blocks. You can see it is interesting to see how his frame has evolved. He's actually quite like it. He's a thinner frame guy than he certainly looked like he was going to be when he was first drafted by the Kings. And he certainly got great size. He can make plays in terms of interior defense. But yeah, the shooting's not there. I think even like you mentioned Dennis Schroeder, part of the problem, there's ideals. Yeah, you'd be better if you had an actual NBA caliber ball handler on this team, a point guard to run some stuff, to take some of the pressure off Giannis. If you had even just a couple of, really, really strong shooters, would make the world of difference. But just the level of what you're talking about in terms of the depths of it. Like Germany going to, like, I don't know, Daniel Tice coming in and out of the game, Mo Wagner being someone who started on the bench, even someone like Isaac Bonga, like that is a level above what Greece have to deal with. And
Yeah.
it puts so much on Giannis. I mean, in an ideal world, yeah, we could say, well, if he just had like the players who are the right fits. Even in a less ideal world, just a little bit more talent, just more capable role players, and we know what Giannis can do. If the margins were just a little bit thinner, he could possibly bridge that gap.
At one
But yeah,
point,
you
when
see
I shared something like, it's going to feel like incredible for Giannis to play with the Bucks, and obviously all these like this perfect fit around him and all these star players. And somebody replied, "Oh yeah, I'm sure he can't wait to play with Pat Connaughton and Bobby Portis." And I was like, those guys would change this team's life,
he
dude.
would.
Are you kidding me?
They could medal. Like they could medal
they
with
would
that.
medal.
Like
Pat
imagine
Connaughton would look incredible in this team. Bobby too.
Bobby Portis would score a whole bunch of points, and all of a sudden Giannis isn't out there on his own as the offense.
Well, and the non-Giannis minutes were truly despicable. That's why I didn't want to hear any of this like, oh, Kaletas, he's still a great point guard. He's not. He can't do anything without Giannis on the floor. None of their actions worked at all. Every possession without, and really a lot with Giannis, but it's like, okay, we're just taking a prayer three and hoping it goes in. They couldn't do anything again. And then Germany's, a great team. Again, reigning world champions. Not for long, but for right now. Not saying that it's a bad team they couldn't, but it was like this against all the teams. I mean, this Spain team is as weak as Spain has been probably decades, and they couldn't beat them. Like, I don't know. It was a disappointing showing, and you don't expect this team to go win gold, obviously, but with a prime Giannis, you just hope for a little bit more. And I think a good comp is like Serbia. Obviously, they have a bunch of guys. I mean, Micic would be incredible, but like Bogdanovic and Micic to open up the floor and make Jokic's life easier, that's like got to be an enviable position versus what Greece was able to put together.
But that is the level of talent that over the years Greece have generally had, and that's what having like prime powerhouse European clubs like Olympiacos, like Panathinaikos, like that's generally what that has done for you. I don't know, is it? And you certainly see that there is a greater influx, maybe because the NBA machines got bigger and bigger and the G League has even risen up to a different level, that there is more of a spillover than there ever was before of guys coming over from America to play in Europe. And I don't know, does that do something to the chances for some of those guys to develop? I mean, Olympiacos, Panathinaikos, they've had notable American players play for them in recent years. Maybe they need to get them earlier, get them naturalized, get them on these teams at a level beyond, say, walk up. But it is, Serbia is a great example of, if you go back to like 04 and kind of the players that Greece sort of had at their disposal. Yeah, not Jokic, but below that, there is something there where you're like, yeah, these are guys who are standouts. They are some of the best players in EuroLeague, year in, year out. They're veterans. They're really crafty players. They know what they're doing. They're going to be so well oiled as a team. And I think that's something that was striking too. Like maybe part of it is fatigue. Like this Greece team has played a lot of basketball this summer relative to a lot of the other teams in the competition. But the one thing you'd hope for that is a level of familiarity, which is rare at international level. That like these guys have got reps, they have an understanding that they'd have some things really kind of down pat where you're like, okay, they've mastered certain plays, or their understanding of where each other are on the court is at an advanced level that you don't often see in international play. Didn't feel like that. I mean, some of the turnovers were really, really sloppy, coming from bad passes, coming from miscommunications. That's disappointing too. But we'll pick into probably some individual players and individual moments in the game. I just think it ultimately comes down to, this is a very, very poor generation of Greek basketball players relative to what they've had in the past. And it just couldn't be any more unfortunate that it coincides with their greatest player ever.
So I just found an article from Basket News from February, because the one guy people are probably screaming the name of right now when you talk about a good naturalized player is Tyler Dorsey. Every Bucks fan remembers, was that the World Cup in 22 or not the FIBA World when he ran with Eurobasket?
I think it was a FIBA World Cup. It was
a FIBA World Cup.
I can double check. You can go on Dorsey and I'll double check.
he was clearly a great fit with Giannis. And Tyler Dorsey, if you're unaware, if you missed this, is just like a G League level, probably currently plays for Olympiacos, just re-signed there actually, shooting guard, 27-year-old, American, born in California, but naturalized and played for the Greece national team in a previous competition. When he was asked about this in February regarding the qualifying tournament, Dorsey said they have to decide between a couple of players. Of course, if they pick me, I will be there trying to get into the Olympics. That's exciting. So they just didn't, they picked Thomas Walkup over him. And I don't know if it had to be those two. Again, I'm unaware if there are there's a certain number of naturalized players versus Greek players or whatever they have to pick. Either way, it was the wrong decision. Thomas Walkup in this game made some of the worst passes you'll ever see, two of the ugliest turnovers you'll find. And, I just don't think you have Calathes there. You know what he's going to do. You don't need a second point guard. You need a shooting guard, someone who can just knock down shots, be that exact guy I meant when I mentioned earlier of Calathes is not a good guy to space off Giannis. Dorsey is perfect. That's exactly the kind of player, not you want, you need. Also, just he'll take all the threes. He had some big scoring games in that competition because he would just, any amount of space, he would shoot. Sometimes he maybe shot a little too much. That's better than just not getting off a shot at all. I think Walkup over Dorsey, if that was the call, if I'm not missing anything here, clearly a bad call. They needed to bring him. We'll see about in 4 years when Dorsey's 31 and Giannis is 33. Hopefully there can be some more Greek players as well outside of them, but that's a painful decision if that's the one that they made.
So you were right originally. It was Eurobasket in 2022 Dorsey played in. In 2023, I guess he was he wasn't technically selected in terms of when it was officially submitted, but he was asked to play. And this is from a Eurohoops article at the time with quotes from his father, Jared, who said, due to family obligations, that was not possible this summer. Tyler is the first option, always on the national team. Hopefully he will help them medal in the future.
That's interesting.
I don't know. So yeah, there is that element. The follow-up, this is obviously not from his father in the article itself, is what is certain is that Dorsey remains available after taking a break this summer, and the naturalized spot of the Greek national team roster will continue to be the subject of discussion in terms of selection in future competitions. So I'm guessing maybe it's one.
Yeah, and they picked Walkup maybe because
maybe Dorsey upset some people by turning it down for the World Cup too. I don't know.
They should have gotten over it. He averaged 13.6 in that Eurobasket, shot 40%, took 6 threes per game. It's exactly what they needed. It's at a certain point you got to make the decisions for the chances of getting a medal, not a guy skipping a competition. It sucks. You'd like a guys to show up every year. The U.S. has showed sometimes you just got to get over it. And if the best players want to show up, you have to let them show up to a certain extent. Obviously, Tyler Dorsey is not LeBron James. If LeBron was Greek, that'd be pretty fun. Also, really miss TA. This is one where he would have been one of the better players on this roster, no doubt. And he doesn't add the spacing, but just having another NBA-level athlete, a good defender, would have helped a lot.
Listen, I am not always the biggest cheerleader for TA on the Ursa Podcast Network.
Yeah. Well, I'm sad Rohan wasn't here to hear me say that.
I hope he never hears me say this so that he never tries to use it against me. But they absolutely could have done with him. And you look at some of the options they were turning to off the bench. I think they could have, particularly because the Germans had so much strength in terms of their size.
Yeah.
They needed strong, athletic forwards at minimum to kind of push that a little bit. And options they were going to off the bench did not have the size to compete with what Germany was going to. So when Giannis was out of the game, it wasn't just a problem of, well, what is Nick Calathes doing? It's the whole thing was kind of changing on its head. The amount of times I felt like Mo Wagner, particularly maybe when they responded to the early Greek run in the first half, would end up standing in the paint with someone like Nicolaitis defending him, and you're like, this isn't good. And then you're trying to work out, okay, where was the breakdown? How did he end up switched there? And you look around and you go, okay, there was a breakdown, but also Greece is really small out there in those minutes. They didn't have the size.
Who played so much, and I just still don't know what exactly he does. Just a guy.
Yeah, that's I think where it comes down to. So there's no doubt that TA, like, okay, he might be at a size disadvantage in a matchup like that, but is TA gonna dig in and like do everything to knock that ball loose? Is he possibly gonna foul out? Yeah, of course he
Yeah.
could. But he might get a couple of steals, force a couple of turnovers, get some blocks on the way. They could have used just a little bit more of that edge, particularly when it came to battling the German bigs. And again, okay, minus Dennis Schroeder, like that's the best of the German players are in their
Yeah.
forwards and their centers. And
Yeah.
it's a battle that the Greeks couldn't win, and even it's kind of too much to ask Giannis to win that on both sides when he has to do everything on the offensive end of the floor too. It's like his
Yeah.
focus couldn't be let's lock down and make sure that the Wagners don't really have any joy today in the way that it might be if it was a Bucks Magic game.
I also think there was a real case for Costas to be on the team as well. I mean, Thanasis obviously couldn't play, so you knew that going into the whole thing. Like a dunker spot big who could actually score from there. The other thing about Papagiannis, the shooting is one thing. He had some nice blocks. He plays offensively. This is the other thing about Brook Lopez. I mean, people complain about his offense and not being like a dominant post player. Brook still finishes at a really high level. Papagiannis looked like he was, 6'2", 6'2", 1 meter tall when he was in the post with the ball. And they just needed their big to be able to score at the rim. They needed some other form of scoring. And I've seen Giannis Antetokounmpo be able to be like that athletic, springy finisher who could maybe knife behind a defense, get some passes by Giannis. I mean, the Greeks just really didn't have anyone besides Giannis who was able to finish at the rim consistently either. Outside of, I will say, Mitoglou. Dinos Mitoglou had a really good game, I think, overall. I mean, came through in some big moments, felt like outside of some walk-up threes, the one guy who like could go get a bucket here or there, but he's like I don't know how tall he is. He's like an undersized power forward throwback. Like it's not the kind of player who's going to win a game against Greece in 2024 or against Germany in 2024.
Yeah, and again, like we're probably not the right people for this. Maybe we can find a Greek basketball expert and
Got to
have
get
a pod
Eugene
on this down the line.
Back online.
That could be it. But to just, what are the alternatives? Like, what are the options?
Yeah.
Looking to Eurobasket, looking to FIBA World Cup, and okay, looking all the way out to another Olympic cycle. Like, the way Giannis has talked about, yeah, he might like to play till he's 37 or whatever. The version of Giannis at 37 is going to be no better equipped to single-handedly lead Greece to medals. So things are going to have to improve significantly from this point to help him out. Like maybe the next Olympics he can still do more of it on his own. I don't know though.
So here's a question. Is it possible for a non-Greek player playing in the NBA to become a naturalized Greek citizen?
No, I don't think so. Unless there's someone with Greek parents, grandparents that they can actually just get citizenship.
Okay.
I don't know exactly how this rule applies under FIBA's regulations. For example, in soccer under FIFA, grandparents is the mark. If you had a grandparent and that allowed you then within Greek law, and maybe the Greeks should just be pretty loose on who they're going to be prepared to give a passport to get the job done here. But if there was someone in the league who doesn't have prospects of playing for the US, most likely. But I don't know, maybe even not the US. Like, obviously, there's a massive Greek population in Australia, and there's also Greek heritage there. I don't know where they could maybe find someone, but
tell me, Ben Simmons is the best. I was thinking AJ Green. Can we get AJ Green in there somehow? It would be life altering for this team.
I mean, Giannis needs to take him on, I think, some much longer vacations in the offseason.
Yeah, he needs to keep those guys over there for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know. I do think they're going to probably have to uncover someone being Greek. All
they need is a quick Luka level prospect fast. That's it. It's that simple if Greece wants to medal in the next Olympics. Or
sounds easy.
Force feed Tyler Dorsey until he becomes Steph Curry at Olympiakos.
If that comes about, if a big Greek prospect did like then it looks easy and it all feels like it is that simple to sort out. They just need more talent. They could definitely do it more depth, but they might just get away with it. Certainly get to a place where you could win a bronze, and that's great. Like an international medal, a podium spot, that is certainly what Giannis is dreaming of, and I think what Greece would be more than happy to take in basketball in this sense. Just need one other guy to help them, someone else who can genuinely carry the load and contribute in a positive way.
Yeah. Let's burn through the rest of just general thoughts on this Greek team, but first, let's talk about something easy versus something hard. Watching the Greek national team was hard. Playing Prize Picks is easy and it's exciting. Watching the Greek national team is exciting sometimes, but Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. I lost against the numbers, by the way, on this very game. Giannis more than 9 rebounds. He had 2. Giannis was a little tuckered out. So that's okay, though. It's still fun and exciting, and I'll be back with more international basketball action soon, because all you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. With Prize Picks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 while watching Team USA rack up the gold medals this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup of players across basketball, soccer, tennis, golf, and more in as little as 60 seconds. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week. Today is Tuesday. On Tuesdays, you can lower select player stat projections to help your lineup hit. Or if you want to wait until Friday, you can get your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the U.S., including, of course, Wisconsin. I mean, listen, a lot of international basketball left. Unfortunately, none more for Giannis in Greece, but a lot of recognizable NBA players across Canada, France, of course, the U.S. team, and Serbia. So get in on the action. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code Eurostep for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code Eurostep on Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. I don't think there were many Prize Picks plays on Greece outside of Giannis. I will say that.
Well,
there was Kaletis assists.
Well advised. Yeah, they were looking out for everyone.
Yeah, that was kind of them. I don't even know if I have that many more thoughts on the rest of the team, to be honest. I'm kind of amazed that the Bucks somehow ended up with the worst Kalaitzakis watching this one play, but that's behind us now, thankfully.
Yeah.
Papa Nicolau let me down. That was the guy I was expecting the most from. There was a lot on his shoulders. It wasn't horrible against Germany, but they needed him to be the second guy, and he clearly was not up to that.
I think he was good. Like, I think he played well, and he gave them a lot. I think it's just, that's what I'm talking about. You're asking the impossible at this point for Kostas Papanikolaou to give you more than that. Like, I think he played really well.
I'm soured because I was very frustrated about his game against Australia when I thought he was really bad in that one game. He was pretty good in the rest, as you say. And I thought at that time, like, if he just knocked down like 2 more threes, they go through to the next round easily. They ended up sweating out a little bit South Sudan and Serbia, but still made it through.
Like, so. He's 34 years old. I mean, that's the thing when we talk about this too, and we're like, what can they do to change this up? He's 34. Nikolaitis is 35. Like, they may not have to, it may not be a matter of how do you improve around the margins. Like, those guys could all be done. Like, it might just by necessity be a completely different Greek team. And maybe that just gives you something more, even if it's on paper lesser names, which that doesn't seem ideal, but it might be. Maybe you just find a better synergy. Maybe you find guys who are a better fit for Giannis if you take the name value out of it. But I'm saying Kostas Papanikolaou innocent, Ty. That's what I'm saying. I think he did at 34 years old. You would want a player of his caliber to do. The problem is that he had to be the second option.
I'm just realizing I kind of had your head cut off, so I'm adjusting this live on the pod. That's my bad.
Wow.
Now you're fully in frame. I feel bad about it. The people got a weird display there. Also, Kostas Sloukas, who I think was maybe the best of like this kind of crew of mid-30s-year-olds on this Greek team, 34 as well. And missed this one, I believe, was not healthy in the qualifiers and said he didn't want to come and take someone's spot like unfairly. Again, like it's you're trying to medal. Like it's not about fairness here. Let's put the best team together, but don't know if he will be back at age 38 to play in LA either. So yeah, I think, whether despite it maybe being the result we wanted to not watch, I feel like Calathes will come back again. I feel like we're not going to get rid of him that easy, but yeah, I think it's probably going to be a largely new team in LA if they make it to the, I mean, it's, you have to make it there too, but it's going to be a different Greek team next time. Maybe next time we see them, and certainly by the year of the next Olympics.
Like, Calathes next Olympics would be 38. That seems...
I know.
38-year-old Nick Calathes is not going to still be playing. I really don't think so. He's not good enough that he's going to be playing at a high level in Europe.
I was saying this about 34-year-old Nick Calathes, and look what happened.
I really think 38-year-old Nick Calathes won't be there.
It's not my actual take. It's my...
You can hold me to it 4 years from now on a pod. You could be like, here he is. And it will be really grim for all of us that we'll have to talk about it. But I don't think that's necessarily what they're going to have to worry about. I hope
not. I hope not, too. Yeah, I mean, I didn't think he was bad. He wasn't horrible. I've seen him have worse tournaments for Greece with Giannis, but probably not by much. I mean, they needed a lot more. But that's I mean, that's going to be the same point for all these guys, right? They're all being asked to play like 3 levels above what their station should be, except Giannis, of course. And that's a pretty big issue.
Like, we're a year out from Eurobasket. And they'll have to get qualified for that. I'm sure they will. Although, as I said, just like the depths of talent in international basketball and European basketball, maybe in particular, are getting much more formidable than they once were. So qualifiers, when you're without Giannis and without some of your best guys, that could be trickier. But once you get to that spot,
I think
I don't know. I don't even know what are realistic.
Right?
But, well, yeah, I guess so. That's part of the problem.
I think everyone plays in Greece. Yeah.
Well, like, what is realistic, or what does a successful Eurobasket look like for Greece a year from now? Like, how many European countries do we expect them to beat?
I mean, they didn't beat any in this tournament, which is a little concerning. Despite, I mean, it was a hard group, but Spain should have been beatable. And then, I mean, Germany's really good, but if you want to medal, you're going to have to, in anything, you're going to have to beat teams like Germany. Serbia is going to be a presence. I think France is going to be really good again. And then Slovenia, like, not a great, it's kind of like this situation again, but I mean, a prime Luka is never going to be an easy team to knock out. That's for sure. Especially if he's probably not as banged up and, we'll see, but was not in good condition for the qualifier. I mean, they probably qualify if Luka's in good condition, I would imagine. So it's going to be hard. I mean, they're going to have to be a better version of a team than what we saw here. That's for sure.
Like, to get beyond, to be a semi-finalist at Eurobasket is not really going to be that much easier than to be a semi-finalist at the Olympics. I mean, okay, the US and Canada, that's 2 pretty big pieces to take out of that. But you could still certainly find 4 formidable teams without Greece. So they'll again find themselves back at this kind of spot. Okay, you should get to a quarterfinal. But then is it even a realistic hope at the quarterfinal stage? Or is it just showing up for there is a big gulf in talent compared to some of the other teams? I don't know. That sounds grim, but I do even think they'd be maybe a little bit vulnerable against some of the other kind of Eastern European countries who are...
There's like this group of like Lithuania, Latvia, Georgia that are like not easy outs for anybody.
Not easy outs. Croatia, always not an easy out. Like those type of countries, they're tricky games. Poland. Like, so when you get in a Eurobasket, that's a trickier part for Greece to navigate, and your reward for that is coming up against... I think the problem is Germany are very much, look at the age profile, their best guys. Like, they're on an upward trajectory. France are very much going to be on a continuing upward trajectory. You look at all of the guys coming into the NBA from France, even beyond Wemby. Like, think of 4 years next Olympics. Like, France could be best positioned to, like, push the US for gold, like, since anyone has been, like, compared to, I don't know, prime Spain. Like,
I
they
think
could be.
they're going to have to develop a guard prospect.
But
I
that
think
may,
they have
well,
one
in
coming.
4 years, that might happen,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah. Who just got picked number 1? Why am I blanking on his name? I mean, Ricochet, that would be, if he's actually the player people think. I mean, no one expects him to be like an NBA MVP, but if he is a big ball handling shooter, I mean, him and Wemby is obviously going to be a lethal combo. And, even him as a prospect I didn't like. I mean, eons ahead of anyone that Greece has on the perimeter right now. I mean, he just got picked number 1. Like, there's no comparison.
Greece can only dream of it, yeah.
Yeah, even in a weak draft. I mean, there's levels here. So, yeah, I mean, and I think Spain will probably find. I mean, they're in a kind of a weird spot. Back. But, yeah, I think they're always going to be at least solid. And they have such a steep tradition of it. So, and then in the bigger international competitions, like, I kind of think South Sudan's going to be a real player. I mean, they were without probably one of their most talented players, and I thought, I mean, they were clearly disappointed to lose. I mean, gave Serbia a fairly real game. I mean, that's a tough team. They gave the U.S. a real game in the friendly stage, not as much in the actual group stage as expected, but I mean, that's one of the most loaded U.S. teams we've ever seen, so that's not really saying too much. It's not going to be easy. I think Japan, I thought, impressed me in this tournament, so. It's a good basketball landscape in the world. That's tough for Greece.
You'll always have Brazil. You'll always have Argentina. Like, they may have their ups and downs, but on the whole, they come back to be competitive at a level where it's tough.
Yeah.
Like, I take no joy out of this conversation because it's painting out the rest of Giannis's international career, and it just doesn't look great right now.
They got to find a guy. I mean, it's like we said, it's not like you can't just go trade for one. It's a bit more complicated, but whether it's developing or getting the right naturalized slot in there, like, they just need someone to come in and they need multiple players, but they really need one good complementary perimeter player. I mean, I don't think Dorsey is like, completely changing your life, but honestly, maybe he is in this tournament just with that skill. So they need more of that. They need shooters next time.
Dorsey is a guy who could bridge the gap with Germany somewhat in this match, right? And if you win this one, then you're into a medal game. You may not have enough to get the medal, but getting into a medal game is the place you want to be. You're giving yourself a one-off game.
If you win this, you go 1 and 2 in your next 2 games, you get a medal of some sort. So it was that close. I mean, that's what's going to sting, I think, as we look at the rest of the landscape of, like, you had that great start. All you had to do was not lose by 10 after the first 5 minutes or whatever. They couldn't do it. They lost by 27 after that. And it was such a good shot that you needed one, maybe miraculous win over Canada, but they played Canada tight. I think that Canada team had really less for Giannis than Germany did. Or it could have been, France, which, I mean, they just benched Rudy Gobert. They're kind of figuring some things out right now. Not taking out the starting lineup. So, yeah.
But again, like, just that sentence in the context of what Giannis has to work with, it's pretty absurd. I think for the Bucks' perspective of this, and to circle back to the conversation we always end up having around Giannis playing for Greece and people getting upset about it, and why is he going and doing that? He is not going to play any less for Greece when they're not winning medals. He's going to get more determined, than every opportunity at the moment, in particular, I think in these years, will to him maybe feel a little bit closer to, like, God, things are not looking like they're going to get better in 2 to 3 years. Like, I don't think Giannis is going to be like, I'm going to skip Eurobasket at the end of the next season. So it's not taking anything off of his international career. I don't think he's just going to give up and be like, these guys are no good. If anything, the way we know Giannis, that's a situation where he's going to double down and he's going to try to be there as often as possible to carry him on his own back. So for everyone who's always been like, I don't really want him doing this, I think they would have been much, much better served if Giannis had been able to get Greece a medal by now. Like, I don't think it's going to get better as he gets older, because I think he's going to continue to double down. It really is, for him, when you look at, okay, what's left for him to achieve? Obviously, he'd love another championship. He'd love multiple more championships. But the thing that is missing, just flat out missing, if his career was to come to an end today, is that he doesn't have a medal, Olympics, World Cup with Greece.
Yeah.
He's going to keep pushing for it.
At least they won a game in the Olympics. I mean, I think that's not a super high bar, but not every nation did. And obviously, it's the first time Giannis went. So I am glad they did get the one win against Australia to at least celebrate one Olympic win, which is not nothing. I mean, it's obviously not what they wanted to do or Giannis wanted to do, but it is an accomplishment, especially considering, there was no easy game for them. I will say it was a tough road. I think you hope for a better performance still, but Canada, Spain, Australia, Germany is 4 legit teams. I mean, there was no easy game for Greece in the whole competition where you look at some teams. I mean, Brazil, respectable. They got to the knockout round. They are not going to progress any past that because they have the USA. But, there were some lesser teams in other groups that Greece and their quote-unquote group of death did not get matched up against. So that's that for the Olympics. I guess quick before we talk about scattered Bucks things, do you think that any of these teams has a real I shouldn't say real shot. Do you think any of these teams will, push USA in a real game the rest of this tournament?
It's up to the US. That's the answer. I mean,
yeah.
I think both Serbia and Canada certainly have the players. Like, I think Canada, well, they have NBA players, and on any given NBA game, even the most talented team can get caught out. It's not like Canada just have a group of NBA role players. They've got a couple of NBA stars. Like, they've got some real high level talent. And I think Serbia, as we talked about, they are maybe a little bit closer to if they survive. They're in the fourth quarter right now, as we record, with a pretty narrow lead over Australia. Actually,
wow.
1 point lead, 32 seconds to go. So we'll know pretty soon.
If I'm the US, I am pretty happy if Australia beats Serbia.
Oh, I'd be ecstatic. I mean, if you're American, I think that's one of the two teams. I think it's too early for France.
Yeah.
But certainly if Serbia go through, I think Serbia have enough guys that it always, with the US, I feel like it comes down to, as we've seen in the past, when, they have been caught, can you keep it a tight game for long enough? If it's a tight game,
That's a 1-point game with 11 seconds left.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I mean, this would also hurt worse, though, for Greece, I think, because then you already beat Australia. If you had won Germany, you're pretty much locked into, even if you lose, you beat Australia, you get a medal.
That's true. Yeah, it's what it's looking like the bronze medal game would look like. I mean, that's frustrating. I think, though, if Serbia survive that, which feels ridiculous to say when we'll know in just a couple of moments whether they have or not, them or Canada could give the US a game, but you've got to be right there with them beginning the fourth quarter. If it's like a 1-2 possession game, then I think they're definitely beatable. If you let like KD go off on a tear or LeBron in the second quarter, forget it. So you got to get it to a point where maybe the nerves kick in and where it really is. It doesn't matter, what name is on the back of the jersey on the opposite side. And in that scenario, I think Serbia are good enough that, over a 10-minute spell, if it's let's duke it out, could they come out on top? They could. Likewise for Canada. So I think it's possible. Unlikely, but possible.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. And I think the Serbia-US game, I just wonder if any country has enough shooting to beat the US if the US shoots well. Like, I think Serbia, they had some open looks, but the US wasn't giving them to... I mean, Jokic hasn't even really shot threes much, but they weren't letting Bogdanovic shoot, and the rest of the Serbian guys just weren't able to make enough. I got Sophie yapping at me here. Come here, Sophie. You want to be in the pod? No, she wants to leave. But I just think you probably need a bad shooting game from the U.S. to have a real shot. And that's probably, I mean, Steph hasn't played well. Embiid has obviously been kind of a flashpoint. It kind of depends who they go to. But my thought is if LeBron and KD are really running the team, I don't think the Americans will lose. As good as the tournament is, that team is just pretty ridiculous. Obviously, as they always are. Well, not always, but usually are. That's a loaded team.
I mean, there's not a better achievement to have, kind of a better record to have on your career than if you find a way to be the LeBron and KD team at this point and all the talent that's there. Like, we're talking about like Jokic and everything he's achieved in the NBA. If he does manage to go beat that team and get a gold or something, like, to talk about immortalizing yourself at a completely different level again. That's a real tough one. But look, it's basketball. As I said, over the entirety of the game, that's your challenge is to kind of just keep pace. But if you manage to do that well enough, like, could you be the team that gets hot and makes some shots? Well, the US hit a weird cold streak in a fourth quarter, and then you hang on for sure. So it's possible. Still very unlikely, but I think the gap is closing purely because like Canada is a great example, and Canada is one that's taken a long time. But just having a roster of players that looks like that on a team that isn't the US, that was not the case for a very long time. Like, I think ultimately some of the mystique around the US team will disappear, and particularly as we're coming to the end of LeBron and KD and these kind of being able to show up at these competitions, you take some of that away, some of the mystique's gone. Like, we're living through an era where a lot of the best players in the NBA and like MVPs have not been American. So does it look all that scary, even if it's like an all-star roster you're going up against in the post-LeBron, KD, Steph era? I don't think so, and I think a lot of those other countries will really like their chances.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think it's fascinating to think about right now in 2024, who is starting for the U.S. at their home Olympics for basketball in 2028. So I don't think you have LeBron. I don't think you have Steph. I don't think you have – I mean, maybe KD will still be playing, but imagine those three guys are gone. I don't know if Embiid – I mean, is Anthony Davis going to be playing at a high level then? Like, I think Ant is a pretty good bet. I would lock him in. I think he's been probably the one young guy who really has stepped up in these competitions. I think Booker's played well, but –
Tatum is an interesting one, given a whole conversation on him.
You'd hope, but again, he's been a very good player, obviously, in these things, but is not. I kind of thought he could be one of these like mellow type guys where just that size and maybe just he hasn't gotten the reps. Maybe he will be able to do that, but I mean, it's just going to be guys who have to prove that they can do it on a more substantial level. We're both a little distracted. I mean, this game is insane.
Patty Mills. I mean, this is bad podcasting, but Patty Mills just made a fadeaway to 1.4 seconds.
Oh my god! Okay, so a 2. So it's probably overtime.
We're all tied up. Yeah, unless they're going to beat the buzzer here, and they do not. So it's headed to overtime.
So maybe we won't know. And the podcast,
I thought we were going to kill time and we were going to get there, but maybe they're going to outlast us.
Refreshing here. Yeah. That's what a game. I mean, this is the fun of this, right? I mean, Patty Mills, a guy who, like the Australians on my timeline were like kind of bemoaning, has just not been Olympic or international Patty Mills, like the whole tournament, certainly the game against Greece included. He's got 26 points with that shot on 11 for 19. Giddey has 22 points as well. It's really kind of stepped up as a scorer. So very fascinating to see those guys. And I think, is Serbia having one of these games where they're just not shooting the ball well? That has kind of been their issue. And I do think, 28%, 8 for 28. Australia is 36%. That's kind of the difference along with those two forwards. I heard, this is way off topic, Robbie Hummel, I think it was, on the broadcast, said Germany has so much depth, because it looked like Tice had hurt his leg and Mo Wagner was in foul trouble. I swear he said they could just bring in Isaiah Hartenstein. And I was like, there's no shot Isaiah Hartenstein is just riding the bench for Daniel Tice or Mo Wagner. I looked, he was not listed on the box score. I don't think he's there. I don't know what's going on there. But I was like totally stunned for a second. Like, how deep is this team if Isaiah Hartenstein is just not a $30 million man is not playing?
I mean, do they need to just break basketball, play it in a way that, I'd approve of, and just like roll at centers all over the place?
I mean,
maybe
that's probably what France should do. They could probably afford to do that.
Well, I mean, it's not working for them when they're thinking about benching Gobert, I guess.
I mean, non-Gobert centers would probably help.
Yeah, like, that is depth. It's also not depth, though, when it's only in one or two positions. Like, that's tough. You can't do anything about that. I've seen that in lots of other sports. That's certainly in football and soccer here in Ireland. We have this problem where we regularly produce very, very good right backs. It's not very useful, Ty, when you've just got like 5 right backs who play in the Premier League and it's all your Premier League players. So one ends up a centre back, one ends up a left back, and you've still got 2 that you just can't get in. Maybe one plays right wing. It just doesn't work. But we seem to have a knack for just like the same positions over and over again. We've got 5 good players. They're all at the one position. It's happened a few times.
It's me on FIFA going through when I take over like a little club and just like, could you play here? No, okay. And except Ireland doesn't have the option to go, whatever, make whatever move that easily. So let's talk about that. We did get a Bucks signing. I don't believe we've talked about on the podcast yet. Very exciting. I'm gonna go for it. I already forgot. Anzejs Pasecniks? No, that was bad. That was way off. Can you help me out here?
I mean, we're going for a combination of what it seems like, European and American commentators have settled on. So I think it's Anzejs
Pasecniks. So he is
you put
a
a
Latvian
D in
center.
there. I don't know where that came from. Oh, it's tough.
This is not a good one for Wisconsinites. I don't know why. I was trying to say it earlier after you, and it sounded like I was drunk, just trying to put together the syllables, especially in the first name here. Big AP, as some me are calling him, is a 28-year-old big man who I believe did not end up making the Latvian qualifying roster, which is not great. Really not a super proven guy. Had some time with Washington last season. Actually didn't play a ton with their G League team. Did play a little bit at the NBA level. But is the Bucks' latest two-way, and along with that news, former friend of the show, not former, active friend of the show, Ty Washington Jr., signed with Phoenix. So we did basically confirm that his two-way spot did either expire and was not re-signed to one of those spots. So we've got Stanley Amudier, AP, and presumably Ryan Rollins. And that was not there was not an official announcement, but we did get a jersey number change confirmation. DeLon Wright came in for the 55, so Rollins swapped out. And so that pretty much tells you he's probably, I don't think they'd switch his number if he wasn't going to stick around. So Rollins earns the third two-way through a strong summer league, and then two new players, a 3-and-D wing and a true big, a 7-footer brought in. Very interesting that they brought in a 28-year-old. I mean, not a developmental prospect. I mean, you could still uncover something, right? But their MO the last year or so had been, we're going to take flyers on young wings, and maybe just drafting two young perimeter players changed their minds on this. But this is really interesting, not having a roster spot for another backup center. The Bucks elect to just bring in a guy who certainly athletically is developed. I don't know how effective he would be at the NBA level, but if we have a new contender for the emergency backup big with Tyler Smith now. So what are your thoughts on this? I feel bad throwing this to you as Australia's up 2 in overtime, but what are your thoughts on the Bucks' new two-way signing here?
I think the age and the height are the most interesting things. I mean, you do need it to be a developmental play because he needs to be better than he is. But I guess if he's better than he is, maybe there is a path to playing time at some point in the season. We obviously know the Bucks' ongoing, problems, uncertainty around what the present and the future of the center position is. With Brook Lopez continuing to age, with, I guess, what Bobby Portis gives them and doesn't give them. So I guess that's part of the play here, part of the gamble. What if we could unlock something and he really finds it at a G League level and he gets some opportunities at the Bucks and that works out and he's someone who's converted? It's probably not the deepest pool in the world that they're operating in and looking at, okay, who can we pick up who's a legitimate 7-footer, who might be NBA standard. So I guess that's just part of the gamble here, right? And I don't hate that. I mean, it's not the worst use of the two-way spot. I continue to feel underwhelmed / conflicted about how the Bucks have used two-ways over the years. I still don't feel like we've got a clear view on it. There have been success stories, but again, it's not a Buck-specific problem. I mean, it applies to most teams in the NBA. I don't think anyone has truly mastered it. You see spells where teams get it right and they get a couple of guys out of it, and you see spells where it's just kind of churning through guys for a long time. Maybe that's the reality of it. You're just, I guess, buying up lots of penny stocks and hoping one of them pans out. And in that regard, does it hurt to gamble on someone who's 7'1"? Could give you some center minutes? No, it probably doesn't.
And I do wonder part of this too. They got a third look at Ibu Baji on a contract going into the season as a Herd player. Did not have an impressive summer league. He is also that size. So it does kind of feel like at this point they're just getting looks at true bigs with the true size and just saying what can you do? The interesting thing here is we've seen like they took the Dragan Bender flyer on an NBA contract. They've tried it more with guys who project as shooters, but Baji and now Pasecnik, not shooters. So it seems like they're like, okay, that's just not working. Can we just find like the energy big 7-footer thing that it's kind of a talking point. People watching the playoffs and seeing teams have success with players like especially the Mavs, right? Their whole center rotation was basically 2 athletic energy bigs. And I don't know if AP is that athletic at this size, probably not, or he would have been on a more standard contract by now. But it's just kind of like, can we just find a more traditional big who's actually going to be playable, or at least take a swing on one? And it's going to be interesting to see, like, does he ever actually get a chance to play? Or do they just go smaller when a Brook Lopez or Bobby Portis misses time? Or do they just try Tyler Smith? But at least now there's another option. And I think, if you're another, I guess, angle of this, and maybe the real case here, 7-foot size plays at the G League level, always does. It helps guards to have a true big like this at the G League level. And I just know, like, we're going to see a lot of A.J. Johnson with the Herd, right? We're going to see Tyler Smith there. And being able to put a true big in place for that will probably help those guys and everyone else on the Herd quite a bit. So that's probably an angle here as well. And maybe we're overthinking about, what we'll see on the Bucks roster from this guy, given they're already a pretty deep team.
No, that's a great point. Maybe we weren't thinking enough about, what this signing represents in terms of maybe what you want to get guys used to defensively, having someone at that size anchoring your defense. And then offensively, what it's like for, developmental guard to, work in the pick and roll or whatever with a legit 7-footer. So maybe that is more than anything. They just wanted to get someone who really has that size. As you said, size is always at a premium in the G League because guess what? If you're 7+ feet, you're possibly going to get an NBA deal if you can play at all, or you're on a really good deal in Europe.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the position more than anything. There's some really elite EuroLeague 7-foot bigs who they could be good bench bigs, certainly would be elite in terms of two-way spots in the NBA, but they don't get there because they're at a premium in Europe in the same way. Yeah. So just, it probably takes a two-way to get a 7-footer like this to give your G League guys reps with the kind of size they're going to get after used to playing with and around in an NBA setting.
Yeah, I mean, there was some reaction of like, especially after the next Brook Lopez comment of like, why did the Bucks should have gotten Papagiannis on this deal? He's like a fairly prominent player on a really good European. Like he's not coming to play.
Does not need and should not. Absolutely not.
No, and there's just like I think there's a misunderstanding that just like a two-way is just better than anything else outside of the NBA, and it's not the case. I mean, you're making more money, you're playing more on a real team. No disrespect to the Wisconsin Herd, but I think is he Olympiacos? Like, plays for a really good team, like a contending team, has a good contract. Like that just wasn't going to be the case on a two-way. If a guy like that is coming over, he's probably got assurances to play, and that certainly was not going to happen on a two-way. So, yeah, I think, if you look at it, actually like a pretty compelling starting lineup between the 2 rookies and 3 two-ways right now that fits pretty well together. A.J. Johnson, Ryan Rollins, Stanley Amudier, Tyler Smith, and Big AP here. That's fun. Like if they're playing in Oshkosh, I'm excited to watch the Herd play, or if they're playing somewhere else, I'll catch games however they're going to be watched this year. But I think that if it's just that context, that's fine. Again, like the Bucks added, Gary Trent Jr. late to a roster that we already thought looked done. It's probably safe to assume guys that we're talking about on two ways are not going to factor in at all unless something has gone really wrong one week.
Yeah, on your Papagiannis point, like he was with Fenerbahce and he's left Fenerbahce for Monaco this off season. So there's multiple elements to that, which is like these are big European clubs. He's on good money, not two-way money, and ultimately these guys are athletes with a limited shelf life, and they want to set themselves up for the rest of their life. Is the NBA the big ticket that they dream of? It sure is. I think for someone of Papagiannis' stature and someone who was drafted, has already been over in the States, it's more realistic for him to go and star, and just someone will come in and take a gamble on a deal which gives him guaranteed money, guaranteed years, and it's worth him making that journey again. Otherwise, forget about it. Also, no disrespect to the beautiful state of Wisconsin and Oshkosh. As I said, he plays for Monaco right now, so Yorgos Papagiannis is going to live it up this season.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that is good perspective here, as it looks like. Oh no,
it's done. Serbia have advanced,
and it looks like Giddey really hurt his ankle on trying for a last-minute layup too. Obviously, we'll have some time off basketball, but yeah, Serbia survives a close one with Australia. It just goes to show kind of the randomness, because I don't think many people would have expected Australia to push Serbia that hard, but it is just a reminder, especially after seeing the Greek team beat Australia, who could not beat anyone else. Anything can happen in a single game. So we will see the next international competition and the rest of this one. No Bucks rooting interest left, but still some good games left for sure. And then we'll see the Bucks. Do you have any other Bucks thoughts on your mind? I know we haven't gotten a pod Bucks in a little while. Anything else that is pressing it for you right now?
Absolutely not. The Bucks are not in my mind at all. Giannis is one of the only things that brought the Bucks back to my mind. That's going to change over the next few weeks. I mean, once we get over the Olympics, it won't be long before training camp comes around, preseason, and all of that will change again, and we'll be in full flight. But no, not really. And I mean, as the offseason played out in a lower key way in some ways than we imagined, it was a pretty tight, efficient window of business. I think some nice work done in free agency. Maybe we end up bemoaning that there wasn't a big trade and things look the same. They found the same way. I think the other side of it is, I think the additions that they did make, along with keeping some level of continuity, like maybe that all clicks into place very, very quickly, and the Bucks can be a much, much better team from working through what they went through last year, and then maybe kind of adding some more to it, having some new strengths with the players they signed in free agency. So, no, I'm excited. I'm excited for it to come back around. I really do like the players and the direction they went in free agency. They did really well in competitive markets to get guys of the caliber they did on that kind of money. But am I thinking about the Bucks right now? Absolutely not.
I'm really excited to watch Giannis play with a guy who gets consistently double teamed by half court after watching this. I mean, I'm sure Giannis is really excited for that experience as well, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what Dame can do this year.
Chris and Dame, that is, talk about
God.
Like night and day for what he's been going through. To get back to having two guys like that on the floor, God, what he would have done for, Papagiannis to really be like Brook Lopez, of that. Like, it's going to be nice for him.
And then the fifth guy of Gary Trent, who's been I can't wait for the actual basketball to start. The trade thing, I mean, it's Bobby and Pat are the two guys everyone talks about. And I think Horst was a little bit higher on his players than I would have been when he said like they all have positive trade value. But I do think they're not in the position where they need to make a move. Right? They're not. I don't think there's any urgency to like we need to make this trade before the season starts, and you can always reevaluate at the deadline. I think one of those guys being traded would probably happen in February, not in the next month or so. At this point, unless something crazy happened, but I think they're locked in. I think that's fine. I think see how the season starts, see how this new group comes together, and make your decisions from there is a perfectly fine place to be, and not feeling desperate is always good. I really don't want to have another like Jay Crowder year where it's like, oh, they're going to trade for him. They're going to make it happen. Like, let's focus on how the team looks, because it should be a really fun team. Chris Livingston already back in Milwaukee, by the way, at the practice facility, shooting threes. Big year for CL. Can't wait.
I don't want to have another Jay Crowder year. It's like an evergreen sentiment that I think it applies.
There's multiple ways that could
applies
be. Yeah,
a lot of different things at this point.
I mean that in all contexts, in a blanket context of any play. Goodbye, boss man. Well, I think that's all we've got on this episode of GSPN.
I'm excited to see
Bucks.
how much of my head was cut off on YouTube.
It's not bad, but it is like you could it was about like you could get your whole forehead. It was just the top of your head, and I don't know why it didn't register to me to look and see like, oh wait, I could probably adjust this. So I feel bad about that. Thanks for reminding me.
Well,
Thanks everyone for listening.
It's a good pull back the curtain moment. Anytime we're all framed properly, and then it's up to Ty to make sure they fit the frames for YouTube.
We're not all always framed properly. I will leave that there. Sometimes it is difficult for me. You are usually framed very well, and that is my bad. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks everyone for downloading the Prize Picks app and using promo code Eurostep for our first deposit match up to $100. Please subscribe wherever you listen. Go subscribe to GSPN Premium. We've had some bangers. They're saying I'm canceled after the last one. I don't know. You'll have to go subscribe and listen and let me know.
I loves guns, they say. You'll have to go check out GSPN Premium for
I'm like an 80s movie, Guns and Motorboats, but check that out. We'll be back next week here. I'm sure Cruising will be back soon. Hopefully less Dower soon. That would be nice. Brewers, please. It's kind of a Greek national team level performance here. But yeah, subscribe. Thanks. Bye.